Hi, I'm Bill Hobson, and you are about to hear an incredibly inspirational story featuring a Paralympic athlete by the name of Joe Delagrave, who is the captain of the United States wheelchair rugby team. Yeah, wheelchair rugby. Look it up on YouTube. It's incredibly fascinating to watch. I just want to take a moment to remind you that you can also listen to and see many of our previous episodes of The Big Impact by going to our website at bigimpactradio.com. And there, all the podcasts, all the videos are available to you for free from the last 5 years. There's hundreds and hundreds of inspirational stories that we share there, and I'd love to have you head in that direction. Speaking of inspiration, let's get into our conversation now with Paralympic gold medal winner, Joe Delagrave. I cannot wait to share with you all the story of Joe Delagrave, and I can't wait to learn the nuances of it myself, because this is a journey in both the world of sports and the journey of faith, and in the life of a man who thought it was going in one direction and it ends up going in a completely different direction. And we're so thankful for Joe Delagrave taking some time to join us today. First of all, how are you, man? And by the way, where are you as we connect today?
Yeah, I'm doing great. About 60 days from the time of recording of the Tokyo Paralympics, and it's been a lot of grace and space navigating that time after getting on such a high of the Paralympics, and then coming back down to everyday life, which is great. With the kids and my wife, but and then I'm in Wisconsin. Home in Wisconsin is where we call home, and right on the Mississippi River there that borders the state of Minnesota. So we're up in the Midwest.
Well, and here I am, a Wolverine in Michigan, and you're a Badger there in Wisconsin. So we're not separated by much, just a big body of water in between the two of us. And you teased a little bit where we're headed with this conversation by talking about the Paralympics, because Joe's story involves a phrase that in the thousands of interviews I've done over the course of my career, I've never uttered the phrase Paralympic wheelchair rugby. That is not a phrase I've ever said before until I started reading through some of your bio. We're going to get to that. Let's set the scene first, though. Let's take us back to the time when Joe Delagrave was a high school kid who was ready to take on the world and was a stud running through brick walls on the football field. And what was life like? Let's go 15, 16 years old.
Yeah, 15, 16. I was a baby deer. I'm a Bambi. I grew pretty fast in middle school, and heading into high school was already 6'4" and 225 pounds. I had no idea how to move my body or do anything with it, but I love sports. I love being a part of a team. I loved figuring out where my role was, whether that was, being a pretty good on the football field and basketball court, on the baseball diamond, and I also loved to do plays in musicals. I was kind of like the jock that did both worlds. I joke for those younger kids that Zac Efron stole my idea, and it turns out that he's better looking, has better abs as well. But I loved being a part of team environments, whether that was in theater or on the football field, and that was just it was whatever sport was in season, I was doing it. Plays, musicals, I was doing it. Just loved being around people and trying to figure out where I fit in with the team.
I'm going to guess at 6'4", 2.25", nobody gave you a hard time for being in theater as well as sports.
No, I didn't get bullied about that one. No.
So things are rolling along quite well, and your accomplishments in the athletic world are pretty impressive. And then along comes this day that will, in the life of Joe Delagrave, forever remain a factor for sure. July 10th of 2004. What happened?
Yeah. Kind of a little bit of background on that is, my obviously my identity is kind of wrapped up in sports. I ended up playing college football at a Division II school called Winona State University in Winona, Minnesota, and a really successful program there, and played as a tight end, and so everything is going really well. For me, that was like the goal: play a college sport, get an education, and move on from there. But July 10th, 2004 rolls around. It was in between my freshman and sophomore years of college, and I'm back in my hometown of Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, at about right on the Mississippi River there as well, and in Southwest Wisconsin, and I'm on a boat with my buddies, and he hits the bottom of the river, and I fly backwards. I was just laying there on the chair, just kind of slouched, hands behind my head, enjoying the summer day, and then boom, a second later, I flew backwards, hit my head on the front of the boat, inside the boat, and break my neck at the C6 and 7 level, which changed my life forever.
Well, when I read of the accident that happened on that day in 2004, the natural assumption is that it was a diving incident, right? That's kind of what you most frequently hear about, is maybe Joe was having fun with his buddies. He dove off and it was too shallow. That the version of what took place for you is even more staggering than that, because you literally could never have avoided it.
Yeah, it's, I'm just watching my buddy kneeboard and sitting there, and growing up on the river, you're out there all the time. And so we knew, those back sloughs like the back of our hand, but you just never know how deep or shallow it is. And my buddy unfortunately just hit the bottom of the river, and it's, I wasn't skydiving, I wasn't doing flips on some trampoline. It just, there's so many things you do, especially, growing up, you look back, and kind of the line that your mom always says growing up is, don't do that, you'll break your neck. And it's like, I don't think your mom ever said, hey, don't sit in a chair on a boat, you'll break your neck. And it's such a freak accident. It's something that, obviously there's probably way more times in my life that I could have broken my neck by doing something stupid. But that day I just happened to be sitting there, and it happened.
With a trauma like that, do you remember the day? Do you have vivid memories of what transpired after all of that? It was just terrifying.
Yeah, I do. I remember, the before a lot, with just and really just looking back and feeling the invincibility of the moment, because you're 19 and kind of a life before you, and it's a really romantic time in life, from the terms of choices that you get to make, and what are you going to do, what major, who are you going to be with, and you're dreaming about goals throughout life, and but you're also feeling invincible at that age. And I remember just my big frame, sitting and leaning back, enjoying the beautiful summer day. It was partly cloudy, 75 degrees, a beautiful July day, and
couldn't have been better.
It couldn't have been better. And then boom, and I blacked out and don't remember falling backwards, and don't remember hitting my head, but I remember waking up, and my buddies were looking over me and asking me some questions about moving my legs or feeling my legs, and I couldn't, and knew that something was wrong, but didn't know the gravity of the situation of paralysis, or what a spinal cord injury meant, or any of the things that would come in the next couple of days.
Well, and the accident led to, I believe, 89 days in the hospital. This is 3 months, folks. I want you all to kind of take a moment and put yourself in that position, because that is not normal. 3 months in the hospital. Nobody's prepared for that. And at some point, Joe, during that hospital stay, the diagnosis was delivered to you by a doctor somewhere. And I don't know if you remember that date as well as you do July 10th, but I cannot imagine how jarring the moment where they said, you're not going to walk anymore. How did you handle that?
Well, God works in some crazy ways. A week before my accident, I had on a Don Beebe House of Speed shirt. I don't know if you remember Don Beebe.
Number 82 from the Buffalo Bills.
A lot of Super Bowls lost, and then he became big in Wisconsin because he helped them win the Super Bowl in '96 beat the Patriots in the Super. And so he ended up having some House of Speed shirt camps. I never went. I was a tight end, and I was probably a cheeseburger away from being a tackle. I should have went. But the reason I got that shirt is I had forgotten my shirt underneath my pads during a college football game. was like, I don't want to chafe, like, no way. And so I'm asking guys for a shirt. Yeah, anything. Our kicker ends up throwing this shirt at me. And it was the big joke that I was, a tight end, going to be a tackle pretty soon. And it was one of those things. I was never fast, but I remember the wide receiver coach going like, listen, guys, in the wide receiver room, they're like, listen, Joe gets open all the time. He runs great routes. Like, he's the slowest guy in the field. I'm like, thanks, I guess. But it was a running joke. And I was like, great, the kicker's making fun of me. Like, this guy's not even a football player and he's making fun of me. And but I was like, you know what, if he's making fun, I'm keeping the shirt. So I ended up keeping it. I had it on a week before my accident on July 3rd, 2004. And never realized at this basketball camp I was helping out with, one of the coaches was like, hey, Joe, like, what's on your shirt? And told him that story, Don Beebe, how speed, the whole thing. And he goes, no, what's that Bible verse on your shirt? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he, on this shirt, little tiny letters, was Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And it just says, trust the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll direct your paths. A week later, I break my neck in the hospital. I think about that verse and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. My sisters knew that I had thought about that. So they wrote it on a poster board, put it on my wall in the hospital room. And I remember when the doctor comes in and tells me, the extent of my injury and what happened. Joe, you got a spinal cord injury. It's at the C6 and 7 level. We think you're incomplete. You're probably not going to walk again. And I remember looking at that verse and getting so mad and angry, thinking like, I don't want to trust in a God that this is my, like, I was just so angry. And I think a lot of times you'll hear people and yeah, like, I just decided to move right on. And I think there's a pause period. A lot, last year and during this entire pandemic, everyone's like, pivot. And I think we need to pause before we pivot, because there's a lot of feelings that come when something like this happens, and we need to own those feelings and really wrestle with those and kind of parse them out. And the pause is really important because it gives us perspective to pivot and to move on. And so it was a wrestling period of going like, there's no way. I got training camp in a month. Like I'm
shake it off, shake it off.
Yeah,
right?
I'm 19. There's no way, right? And the doctor's like, listen, Joe, like maybe a 3% chance to walk. Like that's you're not going to walk again. Like it's not going to happen. And to hear that was devastating and pretty awful, and laying in the bed. And I can't move. And I've got all these questions swirling around in my head about who I'm going to be. And is this girl that I'm with going to stay with me? Am I going to be able to have kids? Am I going to be able
it's got to be every possible question you could ever
just
fathom going through
amplified, because there's a lot of questions at that age anyways, but just amplified and resonating within my mind.
Well, so there are two ways you can go through all of this as a young man. One of them is I'm gonna conquer this. Nothing's gonna slow me down. I'm gonna find a new way to compete. The other way is I'm going to shut it down and I'm going to go into a shell. I am going to kind of turtle up a little bit and kind of live out my days in victimhood. And obviously the reason we're talking is you continued competing. What flipped that switch for you from the being in the hospital bed, overwhelmed with questions and doubts and probably a little bit of anger, one would think, and justifiably so. What flipped the switch for you?
Yeah. I think there's a couple things there. Because you're absolutely right. And most people don't go through something that I've been through, but I think we all have our different moments in life where we've had circumstances or obstacles that absolutely rock us. Whether that's disease or divorce or disability or you name it, depression, anxiety, like that cripples people and causes, or maybe it's just a fear of failure that's absolutely paralyzing your ability to move forward. Like we all have something that we go through, and then with that we all get a choice. And a lot of times we don't like to look in the mirror and take that choice. I think a lot of times we like to say, you know what, it's easier to get like that metaphorical machine gun of blame out and just start spraying the blame all over the place. And it's easy, and it becomes lazy, but it's the easy route where I can blame Kyle, who was driving the boat, or someone can, I don't want to move on in my athletic career, so I'm going to blame my coach, or I'm going to blame my spouse because our marriage. So, like, there's so many different areas to blame in life, instead of looking in the mirror and going, like, how can I react to this circumstance or obstacle? How can I find the opportunity within the obstacle? And I think that happens not by just flipping the switch. I think that happens, for me, you've got to have a faith. Faith is so important. Having a hope and a trust, even when you can't see, even when you don't understand it, I think is important. And then secondly is having a support system around you. I've never been one to be like, I'm self-made and I've made it on my own and I flipped the switch and did it by myself. Now, like, I had some people in my life that spoke into me in that hospital room. For me, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, I even tried to push her away a little bit after the accident, but literally a rock of a woman, someone that God brought into my life that was like, I'm here. Even before we took the vows, like, I'm here for you. And she's been an amazing woman. My wife's April. We've been married 14 years now, but what she did for me then was like, you're still Joe, the man that I love, and I'm not going to let you sit here and sulk, type of deal. She's the one that's going to be like, hey, I'm going to pop a wheel off your chair and leave you there if you're going to, like, she's we all need a little kick in the pants sometimes, and she's never been afraid to do it. But the support system, whether that was my teammates and coaches from high school or college, or my parents or her parents, or some friends that stuck around and said, how can we help you through this situation? Our support group, I think your circle of influence in your life makes you or breaks you. The people that you hang out with, are they raising you up and lifting you up when you need it? Are they pulling you back down when you're getting a little too close? Those human guardrails that say, hey, these behaviors aren't aligning with the goals that you set for yourself. How can we pivot? How can we recalibrate to get you back on course? And I think having those people in your life, so faith and a hope and a trust that God has a plan, and then also the support system, that circle of influence around, is something that helped me make the choice to say, I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not going to play the blame game. I'm going to pursue some passions and purpose in life.
Did you have that foundation of faith coming into the trauma, or did it come later?
So I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up with a mom that was deep rooted in faith. And for me, I had to make that choice on my own. And it was in college, I kind of strayed away from that. But I think with a mom that, I'd come home from school with a math problem, and she's the type of mom that said, this algebra was way above her head, but she's like, Jesus is the answer. I'm like, Mom, I can't.
You can't put Jesus on the test.
Listen, I'm gonna get an F on that bad boy. I understand, and but that's the type of mom she was, and still the deep-rooted faith that even when I strayed a little bit in my freshman year of college, realizing who God was and what that meant for me, really kind of rededicated my life after the accident, and realized it was a wrestling match. It was, like I said before, there's a dark period where it's angry and mad, like anyone would be at this stage. But that verse really clung to it, where I was like, I can't understand this. I don't understand how me being in a wheelchair is going to help me in life whatsoever. But later in life, it ended up becoming, the wheelchair became the miracle. Like when I was praying for healing, I was praying for a toe to wiggle or a leg to move or a sign. And that verse became my sign, and that wheelchair beside my bed became the sign that jump in this and there's going to be opportunities for you. And obviously, 17 years later, it's been a beautiful career of wheelchair rugby and things, and that's been great. But I think it's just shows God's faithfulness through the story.
Oh, it sure does. I'm looking at a picture on your website of a beautiful family with April and Braxton and Braden and Brinley, and your pride and joy, obviously, having those little kids run around and probably jump on dad and do all those things that they've just known since birth. And at the same time, dad's training and competing. He just got back from the Paralympic Games in wheelchair rugby. We've got to look at this for a minute. You know, there are a lot of sports that I can understand. I've wheelchair basketball. I watched some of the Paralympic Games with all of that. Wheelchair rugby sounds entertainingly violent in some possible ways. It's like a what's the when the cars would crash, the demolition derby. That's what it sounds like. The demolition derby. Is that what it is?
Yeah, my completely non-PC way of looking at it when I explain it the first time is, and when I looked at it when I was 20 years old looking up sports, I'm like, why are these crippled people chasing each other around trying to make each other more crippled? Like that was the oxymoron. But at the same time, I'm going, these guys are literally like physically smashing stereotypes. Because for me, I thought I was fragile. I thought I couldn't play a sport again. I thought I didn't have that a piece of my identity anymore. And they're out there going like, yeah, we're disabled, but we're athletes still. Yeah, we might be disabled, but we have goals and desires and passions and purpose in life. And the sport has really taught me that along the way. It really became a rehab for me. It was rehabilitative and recreational in the beginning, just going out there and getting to play a sport that I was smashing into each other. But it really helped me realize I can be independent. I can be strong in a wheelchair. I can be masculine in a wheelchair. And before I was a Paralympian or played for USA, those gifts that the sport gave me were really important in my life, kind of getting some of that passion back in my life, going like, God, you made me like that. I love sports. I love everything about sports, and I don't get to do it anymore. And once I got to do that and then do it in a kind of a really weird physical way was a lot of fun.
Well, you're clearly very good at this. You've been on 12 years on the national team. You've got 12 golds, 4 silvers. I've been a captain for 7 years on Team USA. And as you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, you just got back from the summer games, what probably seems like yesterday, because my guess is those experiences mean so much. Plus, just the journey over there and back had to be quite a logistical challenge for the entire team, not maybe for all of Team USA in the Paralympics. What's that experience like to go and compete representing your country?
Yeah, it's such an honor. It's been an amazing deal. And when you're in the thick of it, and I got to update my website, man, it's been 13 straight seasons now on the team, 8 as a captain. And sometimes you get lost in the journey a little bit, but when you come up for air and realize the privilege to wear USA across your chest, representing your country at the highest level this sport offers, is like, it's kind of crazy. It's a dream. It really is. It's been an amazing honor being in London and Tokyo at the Paralympics. Obviously different games and different circumstances, with one being during a pandemic, and truly an honor, and to see where the sport's grown over the years as well, and NBC coming up big with over 1,300 hours of coverage in Tokyo, where in Rio there was 55 hours of coverage across the entire Paralympics. So monumental change for adaptive sports, and getting people to see our sport was really neat.
A bunch of years ago, when you were first introduced to wheelchair rugby, were you surprised that wheelchair rugby existed?
Oh, 100%. I had no idea what it was.
Because I think a lot of people listening to us are like, wait a minute, what now?
Yeah, they're like, how do you do a scrum? How do you roll on the grass?
Right.
And it's just, and the genesis of the name wheelchair rugby, it used to be called murder ball. It was made up. This game was just innovated by guys that were sitting on the sidelines of wheelchair basketball. They didn't have the function to play, and they're like, let's make our own sport. ended up making the sport. It was in 1977 in Canada, and the sport just blew up from there. So it's kind of still in its infancy, but then once they started gaining some traction, they're like, we got to have a sport that has a better name so we can get some corporate sponsors that don't need to sponsor, and so they got stuck on wheelchair rugby because the physicality of it and everything like that. But we don't have scrums. We can pass forwards and backwards. It's a fast paced game played on a basketball court. We have goals at each end. One goal is equal to 1 point. There's no 3-pointers, 6-pointers, 7. And so it's a fast paced game. We score in the 50s and 60s, and then turnovers come at a premium. So there's about maybe 5 to 8 turnovers at elite level rugby per game. That's both teams combined. So, I mean, turnovers are really, really important, and it makes clock management really important as well. So there's a lot of cerebral aspects to the game that I absolutely love. The strategy. I think most people that love sports love this strategy and finding out different ways to beat a team. So that's been a lot of fun over the years too.
Way before you and I ever connected to schedule this interview during the Paralympic Games, I watched some of this because NBC did have some coverage of it, and I just found it fascinating. And at the same time, I was trying to comprehend what your upper body strength must be like to both power the chair, do it quickly, do it through collisions and all. I mean, it is literally demolition derby. It's pinball meets demolition derby. I would have to think that from a upper body strength standpoint, you're every bit the stud athlete that you were at 6'4", 2 1/4 back in the Glee Club.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Like I had to figure out how to be an athlete in a wheelchair, what that looked like. And for context, in a game where we play, if you're playing a full game, you're sprinting, start, stop, smashing into each other. They're 40-pound chairs, getting that started about 5 to 6 miles a game.
Wow.
And so you need strength endurance, you need speed endurance, you need straight lines. Like you need to be able to think as fast as you're moving as well to make the cuts and reads. And so it's a unique sport. It's unique to train for it. And so it's kind of like having that hockey or soccer endurance, but you also need strength along with it to be able to propel the chair, and push and get a chair started up at 40 pounds. So
how many times have you had your fingers, your hands, your arms injured, broken? I mean,
a lot of different fingers and maybe some elbows and stuff over the years. Some guys, have gotten concussed with some dirty plays and stuff like that. But for the most part, what we always got to be careful about is our shoulder health. We obviously don't have bodies that were made to propel wheelchairs. Like our shoulder joints weren't made for that. And so making sure that we do a lot of our rotator cuff exercises and shoulder prehab over the years. And so I've been thankful enough not to have any major injuries, maybe some overuse injuries at times, and where you got to kind of back it off. And that's always hard as an athlete because it's you want to go. But as I've gotten older, I've realized how important that prehab and recovery components are. So it's I've been fortunate for sure.
Well, I want to encourage everybody who's listening to our conversation or watching the video version of it. You need to go on YouTube and just look up Paralympic wheelchair rugby and just watch what Joe's describing. It's quite fascinating. It's a remarkable athletic feat. And it's another one of the reasons why I'm so glad, Joe, as you mentioned, that NBC did dedicate as much coverage to all of the competitions. I remember watching from Tokyo a gentleman in table tennis who had no arms and served, like tossed the ball up with his foot and had the paddle in his mouth and was incredibly good.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what is going on? And it reminds me again that if you don't give up at a time when your mind might be saying, you know what, give up, And if you will pour yourself into being used by the Lord in whatever way he has for you, you can do some pretty amazing things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's that choice. And it's like when you're going through that tough thing, whatever that is you get the choice to react to it. And that, I think that's what ends up defining our character. That's what ends up defining, like, are you going to get back up when, and that's what sports is. Like, that's what sports teaches us. There's all kinds of metaphors throughout a game or throughout a season. Throughout my career, I was an alternate for Rio, was not on the team. I was on the training squad, got cut a month before, and it devastated me, but what's the choice there? What are we going to do? Like, how am I going to get back? And I could have played the blame game, or I said, you know what, let's get better as better as Joe Delagrave can get, as a leader and as an athlete. And there you go. Then and ended up making Tokyo. And because you have to make that choice in that moment, or in the moments after that. And I don't know, it gets me all fired up. It gets me all jacked up, because I want people to be able to look in the mirror and go, hey, I've got a choice in this. I can control my reaction. I might not control my circumstance or obstacles. Sometimes I do get to control the reaction to it. And as Christians, man, hey, we've already what we're fighting from victory, not for victory. So like, we've already won that. Let's choose this, because permanent victory has already happened. And so yeah, it's exciting for me. Obviously, I get fired up by
I love it.
Coffee in me now. So
I love it.
Yeah.
We love enthusiasm. And I know that's what you also bring to the podium and platform when you speak on behalf of a whole lot of ministries and corporate invitations. So anybody out there listening wants to bring in Joe to fire up your audience, whatever the audience is, joedelagrave.com, and we'll put the link in the podcast notes as well. It's DELAGRAVE, joedelagrave.com. Joe, I am so glad we connected, man. You're an inspiration, and Lord bless you as you continue competing, and even more importantly, being a good dad and a good husband to that beautiful family.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.